Alright, let's do a revision on An Inspector Calls Act 1. The story is set in spring 1912. It should be a week before Titanic sank, which was on the 14th of April 1912. So supposedly the story should begin on the 7th or 8th of April 1912. Also, the story is set in Berling's home. The whole Berling's family, they are celebrating the engagement between Sheila Berling and Gerald Croft. Engagement means that Sheila and Gerald, they are going to get married. So you can take a look at this relationship chart. You have to remember all these people because they are the people who appear in Act 1, apart from Charlie Brunswick, okay? So we know that Sybil Berling and Arthur Berling, they're the mother and father in the Berling family, and Eric is the son, Sheila is the daughter, Edna is the housemaid, and Sheila is engaged to Gerald, and Gerald is Sir George Croft and Lady Croft's son. And Arthur Berling is the owner of Berling & Co. Company, Berling & Company, while Sir George Croft is the owner of Crofts Limited. And so Arthur Berling and Sir George Croft, they are actually business rivals, meaning that they are enemies. They are competitors, okay? So having Sheila and Gerald engaged, getting married, two companies can become friends, become one company, so they are no longer business rivals. And you can see that I intentionally put Gerald's family a little bit higher than Berling's family because in terms of the company scale, in terms of the social status, and in terms of the money that the family has, supposedly George Croft and Gerald's family should be richer and with a higher social status, okay? So, and you can also see that I have a lot of dotted lines linked to Eva because all these people, they have relationship with Eva as well. And in Act 1, you only need to focus on the relationships between Arthur Berling and Eva, and also Sheila Berling and Eva. And also the Inspector Gould. Don't spell the name wrong, okay? Not Google. Inspector Gould. Is inspecting the case. So when the whole family is celebrating the engagement between Sheila and Gerald, the inspector arrives and inspects the case, okay? So these are the relationship. And Charlie Brunswick will appear in Act 2. It's just that I put it there for your reference. So this is a very ugly timeline, okay? Sorry for my poor handwriting, but you can see that the story actually begins in April 1912, where the engagement dinner happens, where 1 week before Titanic sank, okay? And then the rest of the story is actually kind of flashback, going back to September 1909, where when Eva started working at Berling & Company. And then a year later, almost, Eva led a strike to ask for higher salary from 20.6 shillings to 25 shillings per week. Of course, it was rejected, and that's why Eva was fired by Mr. Berling. And then 2 months later, there was an outbreak of influenza, and Millwards was short-handed, meaning that they didn't have enough people to work for them, and therefore Eva was actually hired by Millwards as a shop assistant in December 1909. And a month later, Sheila complained about Eva because of jealousy, and that's why Eva was fired by Millwards. And a few months later, Eva changed her name to Daisy Renton and met Gerald. But this is actually in Act 2, so we don't really need to know about it now. So let's look at several key highlights about the engagement between Sheila and Gerald, about the other parts of Act 1, okay? Let's take a look first. For this business, it's basically business marriage because Mr. Berling really wanted Sheila to marry Gerald so that two companies can combine and no longer be business rivals. And so this engagement between Sheila and Gerald was very, very important to Mr. Berling. And they will know Berling & Company and Crofts Limited will no longer be business rivals. Okay, so there would be one less enemy if they were married, and also they could work together to cut the labor costs down and maximize the money that they earned, so that also to maximize the profit that they earn. So to Mr. Berling, money is everything. He just wanted to earn as much money as he could, and also raised his own social reputation, social status as well. So this marriage is super important to Mr. Berling. However, this business marriage didn't just benefit Mr. Berling. Think about it. If two companies combined, Crofts Limited and Berling Company combined, who actually had the biggest benefits? Definitely is Gerald, because Sheila was not working at all. So eventually the company will be managed by Gerald anyway, after Mr. Berling retired. So of course Gerald would desperately want to marry Sheila and get two businesses combined, two companies combined. So Gerald was actually the one who would receive the greatest benefits. And in Act 1, there was quite a portion of Act 1 mentioned about how the perspective of Miss Berling and Gerald were different from Eric's perspective about the world, about businesses, about managing staff in the company. So when we talk about should Eva be fired, both Gerald, Mr. Berling and Gerald, they would say yes, because both of them thought that Eva was a troublemaker, and basically all the bosses would make such decision. And they also believe that it's the boss' duty to cut the labor costs down, and that's why they would have a bigger profit. However, to Eric actually supported Eva leading a strike, because Eric was just a staff at Berling and Company, and he wasn't even a boss, so he couldn't have any say, he couldn't make any decision, and he actually wasn't happy about that. And he also understood that how low the salary the workers were getting, because he actually didn't have enough salary as well. So definitely Eric would understand and support Eva. And also he thought that Eva was just having a little bit more spirit than other staff by being brave and stood up and strived for higher salary. That's why Eric supported Eva. So this is the main difference between Eric and Mr. Berling and Gerald. So let's once again take a closer look at the timeline when Eva was working at Berling & Company. So remember, Eva started working in September 1909. And then after a year, and she realized that her salary couldn't support her living. Therefore, she decided to start a strike to ask people not to go to work and to ask for higher salary, because at that moment Mr. Berling actually received a very big business. So by asking people not to go to work, then probably she thought that Mr. Berling would surrender and increase their salary, the workers' salary. And they're only asking for 22.6 shillings to 25 shillings per week. And all these happened in August 1910. But of course, at that moment, Mr. Berling tried to negotiate with Eva, saying that, okay, I can promote you to the leading operator of the warehouse, of the factory. I will let a team of girls to follow you, and you will be a leading operator, sort of like a manager. But Eva insisted no, because she believed that everyone should have a higher salary instead of just her. And therefore, Mr. Berling had no choice but to fire her, because he thought that, wow, you're really such a troublemaker. So Mr. Berling fired Eva in September 1910. And then after Eva was fired by Mr. Berling in September 1910, she actually couldn't get a reference because she was fired because she was a troublemaker. But luckily there was an outbreak of influenza, so it's basically flu. But many people were sick and they couldn't go to work, and so the dress shop, the department store, Millworth, was actually short-handed. It means they didn't have enough people to work for them. So eventually Millworth hired Eva in December 1910, even though she might not have a reference, or she might not have been a shop assistant before, but still Millwards hired her because Millwards had not enough people to work for them. However, there was an accident, which was that Sheila complained her, and Sheila threatened Millwards to fire Eva, and of course Millwards had to fire Eva because Sheila was a very, very important customer at their shop. So in January 1911, Eva was fired again. And remember about that incident at Millwards was that Sheila once went to Millwards and wanted to try on a dress that didn't suit her. While Sheila was trying on the dress, she was actually a little bit not confident enough in fitting in that dress because she knew that she didn't fit in that dress at all. But at that moment, she caught Eva laughing at her, but Eva actually didn't do so. Eva was actually just talking to her co-worker, Miss Frances, and they were sort of laughing. So out of jealousy and Sheila was really not confident, and Sheila was really jealous of Eva's beauty. That's why she thought that Eva was laughing at her. And at that moment, she lost her temper and she decided to complain about Eva, threatening Millwards to fire Eva. If not, she would close the account, the whole family's account at that shop. Remember, account here doesn't mean VIP account. Account here means that it's sort of like a credit card system. So actually those rich people, they don't need to pay for the products immediately. They can actually just choose the product and then take the product back home until the end of the month, and then they will pay for all the things that they've taken home all at one go. So it's sort of like a credit card system. So this is account. So at the end of each month, the shop will go to their home to collect the account. So this is what the account means. So if Sheila said, oh, I would close the account, meaning that they're not coming to shop anymore. They're not going to take the product back home, and the shop can never get money from this family anymore. So this is what it means by saying that, to close the account. So at the end, Eva was fired because of Sheila's jealousy. So after knowing Eva was fired by Millwards, it's almost the end of Act 1 already. So the very, very last moment of Act 1, and Inspector Gould actually said that, oh, Eva actually changed her name to Daisy Renton. At that moment, Gerald was a little bit shocked, and they said, what? And Sheila, of course, knew that Gerald was hiding something. So Sheila tried to prompt him and ask him a little bit more about, how did you know about this girl? And at that moment, the inspector actually went out to the drawing room to look for Mr. Burling. So in the dining room, there was only Gerald and Sheila. And in the beginning, Gerald pretended he didn't know about Daisy Renton or Eva Smith at all. And he said, oh, I don't know about this girl. But then Sheila immediately knew that he was just pretending. So she said, don't pretend. And of course, after Sheila said that, Gerald confessed and then saying that, oh, I didn't see her in the last 6 months already, so I wasn't responsible for her death. While Sheila was very mad that Gerald didn't spend the last summer with her. And Gerald also reminded Sheila not to say anything about this to the inspector. But Sheila thought that, oh, don't be silly. Of course, the inspector knew everything. So this is the end of Act 1. So regarding to Eva's death in Act 1, these two people, Mr. Burling and Sheila, they should be responsible for Eva's death, right? But to Mr. Burling, he thought that, no, I was just doing what a boss should do, so I'm not responsible for her death. And it was like 18 months ago. So Mr. Burling thought that he wasn't responsible. But for Sheila, she regretted. She knew what she has done wrong, so she felt really sorry, and she thought that, okay, if I could do anything now to compensate, as a remedy to change the situation, she would do it. So she actually felt sorry, but of course at the same time she knew that she has nothing to do already because Eva was already dead. But we can already see that these two people, they have opposite point of view regarding to the responsibility of Eva Smith's death. Okay. and we can explore more why. But at least you need to remember that Mr. Byrne thought that he wasn't responsible, while Sheila thought that she was responsible of Eva's death. Alright, so that's it of a quick revision of Act 1 of An Inspector Calls. Good luck, bye.